We also Dark Side of the Mona, and my personal favorite, I got 99 Problems, but a base layer ain't one. I know some of you. I know a few of you. Anybody who doesn't know me, who's this guy? I'm going to go quickly through my introduction. Well, you know, I got all this extra time, so we can just go. Right. About 7 years ago, I made that game. It got picked up by these guys, and it won a bunch of game awards, which got me enough money or enough clout to get more money to start my own games company, where I made this game. And that got picked up by this company and released on those platforms. And that won a bunch of writing and narrative awards and things like that. So I'm getting the feeling that I kind of think I know what I'm doing. Which has brought me to my third project called Mona Lisa. So I'm right in the thick of this one right now. Mona Lisa at the moment, by the way, all those other ones were awards that I almost won. They were all seconds and nominees and things like that. Mona Lisa is actually starting to win some awards, so I am on the up and up. It got Best Casual Game Concept at Game Connection back in October. It was the winner of the Very Big Indie Pitch, which is a great thing. If you've ever done anything with games, the Big Indie Pitch is like 3 minutes at a time with a whole bunch of speed daters around a room. And by the end of it, everybody kind of votes on how the game went. So it's a pretty decent profile and a lot of good practice. Even if your game is not in any shape or form whatsoever, it's good to just go in there and hone that elevator pitch. And coming up, we're actually going to be the indie partner at Casual Connect in USA, which means we've basically been chosen because we have a really interesting art style and a great game concept, and they're going to basically feature us as an across-the-board brand. So it's the programs and the name badges and all that sort of stuff. They pick a different indie studio every time. So we, little NI company with 5 people working in it, lucky enough to be that at the Seattle conference. So we're pretty chuffed about all that. Also, we almost won those ones. Anyway, Mona Lisa, I'm going to, for those of you who don't know, have I showed it to you guys before? I mean, I know some of you know it. If you have not heard of it, put your hand up quickly. Yeah? Oh, good, most of you. Excellent. All right, so Mona Lisa is a heist and forgery adventure. Basically, it's what we like to say is we take what Guitar Hero did for music, and we do the same thing to Renaissance art. And yeah, everyone has the same face right now. Okay, prove it. All right, I'm going to let this video run while I talk about it. But this is, hopefully the music's not going to kick in. Perfect. All right. Yeah, so all you're doing here, this is it's a game for tablets. It's a touchscreen game. We throw a bunch of prompts on the screen that slowly paint up a masterpiece over the course of 2 minutes. So what you get is that feeling of Guitar Hero. It's the illusion of talent, right? And you don't need any actual talent. You can play the guitar and still play Guitar Hero and get a totally different experience out of it. Just like you can be an oil painter and then jump into this and go, oh yeah, I see what you're doing. But right, so right about, oh no, we're not there yet. Right now it looks like a mess. Right? We've just started off and everybody's doing their swipes, and this is me handing it over to either a big indie pitch judge or you at one of these conferences. Right here, right about here is the aha moment. And it's the first time anybody has ever looked at what's behind Mona Lisa in the picture, and they realize they've been drawing that, whatever that is, a quarry that exists behind it. Right, so this Mona Lisa, we pitched this to Creative Europe this would have been March of 2015. And so it hit all the right buttons for Creative Europe. Creative Europe is a fund out there specifically for games, specifically for narrative-led games, something that has a character arc and a story arc, and even better if it's culturally relevant to Europe in some way. So this hit all of their boxes. But I didn't come here to talk about how we did this, which is all through, we built it in Unity. It's a lot of canvas trickery and things like that, a little bit of clone brush and a little bit of free painting. And the part I want to tell you about is that Mona Lisa actually started off as 2 games, or 1 game with 2 pieces to it. And I want to talk about the other one. Because, after all, this is an Abandonment Issues, and we worked solidly on both of these sides for over a year. And only this January did we finally have the balls to cut part 2. And we had to backfill it with something else that was going to fill it that felt more like the first one. But it just came to the point where we tried and we tried and we tried, and we got to 90%, we got to 95%. It felt like it was almost always working. But we never hit that point where you would have the flawless production. And as a result, the solution may still be out there. I don't know what it is, but we tried so many things to make this thing work. I'm going to talk about how we got to this and why we abandoned it. Now, the painting game, which some of you saw, when we showed this off at events, hold on, I'm getting off topic. I'm going to skip over to a little bit more about the platform. Right, so the idea was a heist and forgery game, where the two of them go hand in hand. The forgery part was the painting, which you saw at the beginning. Take 2 minutes, you'll paint yourself a masterpiece. It'll be a Botticelli, it'll be a Donatello, it'll be some sort of parody piece out of the Renaissance. But this sort of thing, and as you can see, we put a lot of work into it because we believed that one day we were going to crack that code. The concept was that she was going to sneak about, eventually get to the painting that she was going to steal. During the heist, she was going to hunker down behind a bookcase and make a really shitty forgery of it, and then leave the forgery behind and run out with the original. And if the forgery was better, or it was good enough, when it hit a threshold, it was good enough to fool this little dope down here. So if he walks by in the middle of the night, and he's drunk, or he's, well, you know, it's dark, and he sees a painting that kind of looks like the one that was there this morning, he'd be fine with it and just walk right on by. But if he noticed it was a fake, because you only got like a 40% fool factor on it, then he'd ring the alarm and everybody would wake up and then everybody would come chasing after you. It would make the escape that much harder. So, yeah, get in, find the painting, make a swap, and find a way to escape. And the platforming levels went from anywhere at this tiny size, get into the door and then get up the stairs, that's like a 5-second level, to this size. And this is like the Florence Cathedral, where you would have come in by a parachute and run down here and come across it here and skip across these chandeliers and avoid the organ and all that sort of stuff. We had loads of level design done, and we got that? There we go. Some of the level design we had set up, how this was all supposed to pan out. But part of the problem was that we were trying to get this to work on tablets. And the worst part about platforming on tablets is that. I've never heard anyone in my life say, give me more than virtual D-pads. Right? And it's a problem when people try to make a game that is cross-platform, and I'm sure everybody here, whether it's, I mean, I don't know how many people here, I don't think many people here are game developers, are they? Is it mostly software development? What would you, yeah? Yeah, so I don't know if this is a direct problem that you have to deal with, but I'm sure that it's, this sort of thing, your thumbs get in the way. You know what it's like to play it as a consumer, and how much it sucks when somebody tries, oh, you know what, this is great on the console, let's throw it over onto the iPad and see how it works. And it usually doesn't. So what we set out to do is make the perfect touchscreen platformer. And the way we were going to do that was, instead of having a thumb pad and a couple of jump buttons on the side, you were going to paint the path that you wanted to follow. Right? So you would take this setup and you sort of zip, 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 and get her around and all the way up to the top. And if she could do it, she'd let you know. She'd leave a splat behind and you could see that. And it worked to a degree. This is the very first demo that we did. Right? And all we wanted to do was see if the theory was sound. Right? So you draw the line, and the greens represent key points, jump points. And so she would just, like, the coins had nothing to do with it. It was more of a goal to get me to run around the level and see if it actually worked the way I wanted it to work. It had to be predictable. So what we were working on was a predictive pathfinding platformer. Now this, I think we put this together in about 12 hours. And based on what it's doing, it looks pretty decent. It looks like it could do the job. And so we thought, yeah, you know, there's something in this. Let's keep working on it. And then we worked a little harder and moved on to something a little more fancy, where we had a character in there. We added some stairs that we can go up and down, and it reacted to things a little bit differently. Again, it's still just obviously really rudimentary. So we thought, yes, this is definitely something that we could move forward with. And it's very possible that each of you right now is sort of going, yeah, I think this is how I would do it. You've got some special engine, some special code back in your mind. Because it seems simple. And like going to different events, I would show off the painting game, and people go, wow, this is really fun and really exciting and simple. And then I'd show them the platforming side, and they go, wow, this is really great too. But it was sort of secondary to the painting. The painting was more unique, because everybody had seen platforming before. And also the other side of that story, I will save for later. Right, so a pathfinding platforming engine. It sounds extremely simple, but I'm sorry to report that it fucking isn't. It is not easy to do at all. And I'm going to show you why. It's, I'm going to take you through a lot of our brain dumps done through Illustrator. Right, so this, purple represents my path. This is the guy. This is Mona standing in the middle there. And obviously, if I do that, it makes sense that she's going to go from here to there, right? If I do that, then yeah, it makes sense that that's going to happen. Now, suppose I do that. Now, would you expect her to jump at the beginning and then run flat? Or would you expect her to jump in the middle once the level of the jump reaches above her head? How many for the orange? How many would expect the orange? Okay, how many would expect the yellow? Interesting, interesting. Okay, I'm going to hang on to that. How many would expect this? Right? Oh, we're far enough above her head that obviously we want to stay high, so we'll just keep jumping. And anybody like this one better? Yeah? Oh, you're in? Okay. Now, part of that comes down to, okay, now what's a jump? What does a jump consist of? Is a jump the point where our line goes more than 45 degrees, or when it goes above a particular height? And when we come down, is it when it drops to 45 degrees, or when it gets down below the level of what the head height of what we defined an original jump to be? And so, all these questions, we can't, you know, it would go to the program, and the programmer had a different feeling of how it should be than I would. But all of this was still conceptual. It was based on that first blue screen that you were watching me do, and then this here, which is sort of, let's guess at what we think it's going to be. And this is like a big boon toward the importance of user testing early. Right, so, then what about this? Okay, because it's a drawing platform. The most important thing to realize is that we take away the virtual D-pads. The other thing that you take away with that is direct control over the character. Now, you're used to playing Mario, where if you push right, he runs right. And if you hold right a little too long and he falls off the platform, that's your fault. But if you stopped drawing a little bit too far, but you meant to stop drawing on the edge of the platform, do we let you fall, or do we interpret that as, no, you wanted to go off the edge? So, okay, coming back to this. This is still just flats. I mean, we're just talking about flat planes here. What happens if we had a gap? Now, is that, okay, how many people say green? And how many people say yellow? Right, you guys are saying yellow because he did not jump. I did not indicate that I wanted to jump, so I probably meant I wanted to fall. But I drew the line to here, so I probably meant I wanted to end up in this space. So the lack of an indication of a jump here becomes a conflict. And also the definition of how much of an angle we put onto a jump is... this is still the beginning. I've only got a half hour here, and okay, here's another one. Okay, a flick jump. Would you expect a flick to carry her over that jump? So physics would continue, or you want her to stop where the edge of your finger ended. No, I want it to end there because that's where I pulled my finger off the page. It's another thing to overcome. And so that changed into this. Okay, what if we had these sweet spots at the edge of the platforms? I mean, okay, listen, I know that maybe none of you care about coding platforming, but the application of this as something we have to predict what the user is thinking is applicable everywhere, and it's actually easier to show when we're talking about it in terms of do I jump or do I not jump? What did the player mean? How wide is the player's finger? So here, if you happen to walk past this, what we call the sweet spot, if you stuck in it, you probably meant to pull back. And if you didn't quite make it, you probably meant to finish it. But if you definitely ended in the middle, then you probably meant to fall. You want to go over the hole and then drop. And then that also added up to what happens if I specifically want to go down the hole. And then what happens if I do that jump instead? that one up there, we have to decide whether to jump at the beginning and fall, or give you the endpoint. And then there could also be an alternate path that comes out of that. And then, so you say we're still compounding the problem. And then we add height. Height's a problem. I didn't indicate the jump. So does that mean I should go straight? Or should I stop at the edge where I can't go any further because I can't read that right away? Or do I go up and over the top? Now this is the one that hit the point. This is the crux of once we put this into practice, this is where we realized this bit is surprisingly hard. And what I mean is it's surprisingly hard to play. And this goes back to everybody here saying that, well, how does, I believe that he did not jump, he should fall down the hole. What happened here was I tried to play this level, and trying to get up there without bumping my head and landing on that second platform was nearly impossible. This is what happened almost all the time. I'd hit my head and fall, I'd hit my head on the lower part, I'd jump and then it would decide I still wanted to go underneath. That's the worst, right? So, with all of this, we came to the conclusion. If the player is wrong 75% of the time, it's not the player. It's your system. So everyone here who made the distinction that you should fall when I just draw straight over the hole, you guys are wrong. Because what most people want is something that looks more like this. Any of those lines should get me onto that platform. And this is what we, around the office, started to call the you know what I meant factor. And working on the you know what I meant factor, something like this ends up being the crux of the whole thing. Do we want to get to the end point? A is where we want to end up. So we have to decide that if you start too low, we still want to run. And if you start too high, we still want to run. And if you jump too early, we still want to run. And if you completely miss this gap, we still want to end up over there. And that felt like the most satisfying. Because when we were playing a game where it was meant to be a casual platformer, it wasn't about direct control. And it became our fault when your line was wrong. And this is where, it's almost like a whole metaphor of where games are going nowadays. It used to be, when you played something like Lemmings, where, how many remember Lemmings? Yeah? Huh? Right? This was a game where they gave you a bag of tricks, and they told you where the exit was, and they said, you can't do it, we could, it's all you. And you would frustrate yourself and bang your head against the wall because you couldn't do it. But if that happened today, it would be the designer's fault. Everything's moved toward that feeling that it should be easy, it should be intuitive, and if it isn't, then it's probably designed poorly. Now, the other side of the you know what I meant factor is bracketed by the YJVAD factor, which is the you're just being a dick factor. And all of us in programming know that people like to break stuff. And so when somebody draws a line like that, we had to make the distinction. Well, do we do all the calculations to say we eventually want to end up at Z, and we want to backtrack from it, but if this is impossible, we want to cut off an arm, and so we end up with something that looks kind of like this? Or do we just go, fuck you, you just meant Z, didn't you? Right? And so that, like, if you did that, I would assume that the player would go, yeah, you got me, I was just being a dick. Right? I just wanted to see what your system would do if I drove too many circles into it. And so, and the funny thing is that the two things, you know, you're just being a dick factor and the you know what I meant factor, sometimes you don't know whether the line that's been drawn is one or the other. Because I'm going to see if I can break this, and I just slipped up because I've had 3 wines tonight. It could be very well the same thing. So, from that, we did more, and we did more, and we did more, and then we did some more, and then we got to a point where I had a mental breakdown. Because how many people recognize these?
Equations of motion.
Who recognize these? Anybody?
Equations of motion.
Equations of motion? Yeah, kinematic equations? Yes, yes. Okay, I got to a point where my programmer, I said, why aren't we hard coding the physics? And I sent him this, you know, the kinematic equations, and he's like, what are those? And it's like, you're hard coding game physics. You got to know these. This is how everything feeds off of everything else. So we have 5 variables at the beginning, and everything else extrapolates from that. And he's like, oh, I've never used anything other than engines before. Everything he'd done was, I mean, he's a fantastic coder. He's a genius. But he had never seen this, and he had an A in physics. So it's, it surprised me. And so my trip to to GDC, on the plane, I spent 12 hours working out the physics from scratch, from first principles, using the 4 kinematic equations of how we should be predicting where the edges are we're going to hit, and how we're going to make sure she doesn't get hit in the back of the head, and all that sort of things like that. So basically, through all this, we ended up with, is it going to play? It is going to play. This is as close as we came. So this is with a bunch of art in, and this is with it working. It's even got a bit of a tutorial to it, and a lovely flow diagram. So as we start to draw, it leaves a little trail behind, and then she finds her way up the side. Right? And it's very nice, and it's very easy to show to people, and people pick it up and they twiddle their way through it, and it's very satisfying as well. It's a bit therapeutic. But if you watch this long enough, I just did a 2-minute video of whatever was going to happen, and sure enough, there's about 3 or 4 places where she just misses. I'm going to skip ahead because I'm down to the 5. Right. So again, show of hands. How many have thought so far this is fascinating? Oh, really? Oh, that's good. So I was going to say the other half who gives a crap about any of this stuff. And the reason is, all of you are developers. So you guys like to get into the thick of how everything works and the mindset of the person who put it before them. But when it comes to the player, when it comes to the user, most of the time, this is what you're met with. So all these stories I just told you about, all the background and how hard it was, and my programmer not knowing the kinematic equations, and me doing stuff on paper on a plane, it comes down to when you release the game, nobody cares how hard it was to make. Nobody cares how much better it is compared to last week. Nobody cares how much sleep you lost during the process. And sadly, nobody cares when it works perfectly. Because when it works perfectly, perfect is the baseline. Perfect is the minimum expectation of a game, of a release, of anything that you develop. When it goes on the shelf and it's available for somebody's money, they demand perfection. And if you can't give them perfection, then your 75% working product, or your 85% working, or your, it doesn't matter, that's months, a few more months goes into that, we're 96, still some breakages, let's patch it, no, we're at 98 now, 99, no, I'm sorry, but that's the best we can do. 99% working is still 1% broken. And when 1% broken goes out on the market, if I told you, if you were about to board a plane, and I told you that 99% of our flights, 99% of our passengers get there alive, you would not take that deal. You demand perfection from airlines. You demand perfection from when you purchase, an item of clothing, and when you order, and software especially. If you press a button, it does something else. It's like, oh, screw this, 1 star. 1% broken is 1% broken, and 1% broken is a 1-star review. And when it comes down to the reviews, just doing the simple math of it, for every 1-star review, which is very easy to do, how many times have you seen, didn't install on my computer, 1 star? And you're like, obviously I didn't ship a product that didn't install on everyone's computer. It's only yours. So give me the benefit of the doubt. It doesn't work that way. And for every 1-star review, you need 4 5-star reviews in order to get you up to a 4 again. It's hard, and which means that good enough just isn't good enough. And when I talk about the phrase good enough, I like to tell this story, which I completely made up. By the way, it's not something I read online, it's not something I saw on a DVD, but I imagine the first time I saw Gollum, I remember watching Lord of the Rings 2 Towers, and being amazed by how much work went into Gollum. And feeling as though he was part of the system, and imagining one coder strictly in charge of Gollum, and going, hey, Peter Jackson, come here. Here's the latest Gollum. What do you think? Is it good enough? And Peter Jackson just looking at him at the words good enough and hits him in the back of the head, said, you're out. I want someone else who will not ask me if it's good enough, because we can't stop at good enough. We have to keep going until it is perfect. Because otherwise we end up with Dobby the house elf, or worse, sometimes the sounds, right? So I think, what am I down to, like 1 minute? Yeah. Right. Why I'm not sad about any of this? Well, obviously, okay, if this was my core product, I would be devastated. If the only thing I was working on was the perfect touchscreen platform and I couldn't achieve it, then I would still be frantically tearing my hair out and trying to make something out of how all this works. And it may still be the thing. It may still be my white whale. it may sit in the back of my mind and plague me, and I'll wake up in the middle of the night with an idea and scrabble it down on a pad. But why I'm not extremely sad about it, first of all, okay, I was lucky enough to have 2 core products. And the 2 core products were the painting game you saw at the beginning, which, unless you showed up late, sorry guys, and the platformer. And at the beginning when we pitched this, we pitched it to, when it was all in words, when it was all words on paper. We said, what we want to do, something where you break into a house through stealth platforming, then do a heist, like a forgery in the middle of the heist, and then go back to the platforming to get out of the house. And you talk to people about that, and they're like, geez, art, they all made the face you all did, which was, okay, show me, But it was more like, people like stealth platformers, people know what they are. Art games are not fun, don't do that, just do a stealth platformer. And so we said, that sounds great. We took the money and we put it all into the painting. And we said, we're going to show you that this could be done. And we had this vision that it was going to work. So 3, 4, 5 months later, we had a painting engine and that rudimentary platforming engine. And then everyone looked at this and went, oh, wow, this painting engine is really good. I'm glad you didn't listen to me. You should forget about the platformer. And so then we went, okay, let's put all the rest of our money on the platform. And lightning doesn't strike twice. But I was lucky enough to say this worked out. This gamble worked out. And I suppose, in conclusion, both were impressive in an individual level, but the painting was more impressive. And so it was easy to let the second, the second born sort of drift away. And I suppose also the duality of what we're doing. We were always going to run into some problems where we're, people like one and not the other. And as a result, you get a 7 out of 10 because this is great, but why'd they do that? And this is great, but why'd they do that? There's always going to be some kind of a dissonance in those 2 things. Which brings me to my final slide, which is never half-ass 2 things, whole-ass one. That we can all learn something from Ron Swanson. It's a great quote, and it's sort of a bastardized version of Steve Jobs' whole do one thing well. But lucky enough, I had one thing to funnel all that energy back into. So I'm happy to chat about the ins and outs of the actual, I can show you all those slides again in full detail. I have the book with me with all my writings because I'm very proud of them, but like I said, nobody here cares. Unless you do, in which case, come on over and talk to me. Thank you very much.
Awesome, thank you very much, Kevin. In 10 minutes we have a talk from Alan, who I don't think is here yet. So yeah, sit down and hang about for it.
All right.